Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Homebrew, brought to you by the team that has created Nuhom. Today's episode is going to be about how agents should be working with clients, specifically home buyers, and how those agents are paid today. A little bit around what the Department of Justice has been bringing to light for some time now about buyer agents, and why Nuhom kind of operates the way it does with giving back a rebate.
Yeah. So maybe we tackle the first question, which is, what do agents do for home buyers to get paid the way that they do?
Yep. So today, buyer agents are, effectively expected to help home buyers discover and search for homes that might fit their needs and wants. In various neighborhoods, give some thoughts about, why some of these areas might be a good fit. And that's a lot of the discovery and the searching. The other part of it is the execution. It's about, getting a tour set up, doing some home diligence, providing pricing information about a home that you might be wanting to make an offer on. Ultimately, buyers need an attorney and need, more often than not, some sort of a lending firm. And so being the liaison between the buyer and these other parties is a lot of what they do in the execution side of things. And so today you see, varying levels of, agents providing those things, varying capacities, varying speed. And so, something we'll talk again a little bit about Nuhom at the end is like how we're trying to improve those areas. We believe that most people today are doing a lot of the searching on their own because of technology, and should be rewarded for their efforts. And at the same time, we've also set up our teams in a way such that effectively lowers a lot of the cost to us and divides a little bit of the efforts. And so, that's part of why we're able to provide a lot of what we do on an on-demand sort of way.
So you can say that, because of technology and, how people are engaging with services today, the role of the agent is changing slightly to adjust to that.
Right.
And more focused on value-add items rather than, tasks.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is going to be advisory in the future, and I think that's ultimately where a real human, a person, can give thoughts about a specific area. And it's just like when I go to buy a piece of real estate, and I've bought several now, I still need a little bit of like, hey, that makes some sense, or another pair of eyes that says, hey, you're not, doing something wrong, basically.
Yeah, for sure. So we understand, the role that the agent plays and what value they provide. How do they get paid?
So agents are paid today, real estate agents are paid through commissions as a part of the sale of the property. And so the way it works is a seller agent or someone who's trying to help someone sell their home as an agent will go to your house and they will sit down or talk to you on, maybe Zoom or something. And if you've decided to work with that agent to help you sell your house, they will, ask for a fee. And, they'll negotiate with you or they'll ask you. Typically what we find is it's about 4 to 5% in the Boston area. And that fee covers both the seller agent as well as the buyer agent, because the seller then turns around and says, I'm going to put this listing up and I'm going to market it with a buyer agent fee, out there. And so the seller agent, to the best of their ability, will try to get the highest fee if they can. And then they will try to provide a fee that's strong enough to incentivize a buyer agent to come in and assist the buyer, in purchasing that home. Now, typically it's been 4 to 5% around here, as mentioned. So, often you'll see 2.5 and 2.5. Sometimes it'll be 5%, but the seller agent will try to keep 3 and give the buyer agent 2. But a lot of the traditional industry of agents, like, they do try to collude and try to keep that price at 5 and then try to incentivize both parties to be at 2.5 because kind of status quo, everyone feels good, everyone feels like they're being paid equally. But a buyer agent doesn't choose, that fee at the end of the day. They have no part in really negotiating that fee that they are getting. And so a lot of it comes down to when and if a buyer finds a specific home to be, the right fit for them, then a buyer agent finds out, like, okay, this is what I might be paid if, the buyer ends up going through the process and does want to buy the house.
So if we took an example, let's just say a home is listed for $620, it's sold for $600, right? And there's a 5% commission built into that. And if it's split in the middle between seller agent and buyer agent, 2.5 would go to the seller agent, 2.5 would go to the buyer agent. So effectively, at the end of the sale, the buyer agent is making $15,000, and then same for the seller agent.
Correct. Yeah, and there's a lot of talk about, like, who pays for this amount and such. And so, if you followed, like, the process earlier that I laid out, from an accounting perspective, the seller, it looks like the seller is paying out of their portion of proceeds the buyer and seller agent. But at this, and everyone sort of says that. At the same time, the buyer is paying the full amount, by way of, some sort of lending or mortgage and their down payment. And so it could also be perceived that the buyer is actually paying entirely the buyer agent fee and the seller agent fee in the process. But, had no, control in the whole decision-making process of how agents, would be compensated in that process.
So a buyer typically does not have, or do they have ability to negotiate that fee with the buyer agent?
In one way, anything is negotiable. But I would say that a lot of buyer agents, don't try to negotiate or bring it up as a point of negotiation or, like, try to tier their work.
Because they may effectively lose the deal because they're not the easiest probably group to work with, because buyer agents don't typically have the deciding power to decide what the fee originally was. Yeah.
And it might be different for different homes. Absolutely. So a buyer agent typically doesn't even bring up the fact that they could negotiate this, fee with the buyer, because the buyer is constantly told in the process that you're not paying for the buyer agent and it's free to them. And it's actually one of the things the DOJ is working to bring some light on is that, every buyer agent is not free, and that it should be explained to every buyer how they're compensated and what they're compensated, on that sale. Now, that's important because even as a buyer agent, like, you may work with some clients for an extremely long time, and that's tens of 20s of hundreds of hours sometimes.
Sure. Showing people homes while they're still trying to figure out what home they want to buy, and they feel like they can do that because they're not paying everything weekly. And so it's just important to have that candid discussion about how an agent is being paid, what they're typically paid. It just bodes well for everybody involved. Sure, absolutely. Transparency is good. Yeah. So we understood how they get paid and how to look at who's paying. We typically say that the buyer is ultimately paying that fee. What's unique about Nuhom? What do we do that kind of helps the buyer in this situation? Yeah, so we believe and we see really in the data as well. And NAR also publishes a lot of this information, the National Association of Realtors, because they do a lot of sort of data extrapolation and such, but that most home buyers, especially like of the millennial age today, people that are digitally savvy,
are finding the home that they want to buy through their own searching.
Sure.
They can deduce a pretty good amount of whether a home is a fit for them by, looking online, going to a 3D tour, going to an open house, driving through a neighborhood. These things are a lot of the early things you look for as a buyer. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of buyers are doing that homework on their own before, Zillow, Redfin, and online listings and the like. Buyer agents had to introduce those homes to you and say, hey, these are the homes that I think are a fit for you. But now it's decentralized and you're able to look at homes every morning,
sure.
Of course. And so really the level of effort that we think most buyer agents do today is far less on the discovery and search side of things. I would say the execution side has probably gone up.
Yep.
But it's also the side where most buyers need the help.
Yep.
It's the type of thing that they don't do on a regular basis.
Part.
Exactly. Yep. It's they don't know what they don't know in that side of things more often than not. And that's really where Nuhom has developed sort of a best-in-class approach, an on-demand approach. And what we've decided is that for any home buyer that comes through with us and wants to utilize Nuhom as their buyer agent, we would give them back 1% of the purchase price, assuming that there is some sort of a decent commission, 2 to 2.5% built into the home purchase, and that we would give back 1 for that discovery and search effort, because we think buyers are going to do it anyways. We think we should value their time.
What do they say that 8 out of 10 home buyers are effectively finding their home by themselves online?
Exactly.
And what we're doing is we're helping them go execute and go buy it.
Yeah, exactly. But we don't falter on the things that people need done in order to make sure they're buying it and buying it right. We give clear home diligence, information, to the best extent that we can, pricing information, tours, if open houses don't, accommodate your times. We'll give you a home advisor that's your dedicated person throughout the process, and they're the ones that are making the offer for you and strategizing with you ultimately. And then we back that all with simple technology today that allows a home buyer to do things on the go. And so
I would say complicated technology in the background, but simple for the buyer in the front end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So more value, lower fees for the buyer, and then it's just way more rewarding to get that 1%. It's a huge amount.
Yeah, and I'd say a lot of people balk at discount brokers and things like that, and I think if you really frankly ask a lot of agents, they know that a lot of the market, that is a bit of the future. And there's going to be some Department of Justice, changes that come down that side of the pipeline as well. But the truth is, if there's been technology that's been put in place over the last 10 to 20 years, there's got to be some way to reward people, for putting in the time and the effort that they do. And I think this is an excellent way to do that. It incentivizes them if they're truly, a buyer in the market and they're not just trying to waste your time, for example, that, they're going to look. And when they see something, they're going to want to move pretty quickly on it. And that's where we're super ready for Nuhom. Like we pride ourselves on being on demand because we know that home buying is, so timing based. It's so serendipitous. It happens, at any point in time, really. A home that you could have liked a week ago, didn't get an accepted offer, could come back on the market, a week later, and suddenly, you're back in the game per se in order to make an offer. And so it's like having that team ready for you to be able to execute and execute right is really important.
So go to nuhom.co to get started.
Yeah, that's right. And really read up on what we've written about. I think it goes to show a lot of what we stand for. We're anti-salesy. We don't make you sign a bunch of buyer agent contracts and obligations because we know life changes. We know home buying decisions change. It's a really big decision. And so, you know, I think it's important to understand who you're working with, and that's really what we're about.
So just to kind of wrap up, so transparency in how commissions are paid, or agents are being compensated, rewarding the buyer, right, with the 1% back that we give. Mm-hmm. You know, and the role of the agent is, you know, just to reiterate, is very important, especially in the execution phase. So what we're doing is we're addressing the needs of the buyer, and we're addressing the current needs of the agent, and making things more transparent and easy to navigate through the process.
That's right. And I think there's a lot more to do.
Yep.
I think the seller agent side of things needs to be more transparent as well. Mm-hmm. But I think what we've done so far has been really helpful to a lot of home buyers, and it's also kind of divided up, you know, the efforts a bit, mm-hmm. And has allowed home buyers who are willing to like look for homes and are feeling like they're already doing it because they know better what they want than
they're
their
doing
agent.
it. They're doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It gives them that great option of like, okay, well now I can actually make money back. Mm-hmm. That's cool. And I can put it towards, you know, my closing costs, or put it towards potentially other moving costs and you know, big costs that you have when you buy a home.
Of course. I mean, buying the home is one thing. You gotta fill it with things. So
right. Yeah,
that 1% goes a long way for that.
Right. So yeah, we, you know, goes to show we really value, you know, all of our home buyers and their time and effort.